Mo 2nd, 2001. A Wednesday morning in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Leslie Preer didn't show up for work. She wasn't answering her phone. So coworkers called for a welfare check. What police found inside her home would launch a murder investigation that would take 23 years to solve. And the answer had been hiding in plain sight the entire time. The killer wasn't a stranger. He'd been in that house many times before. As a guest. As a boyfriend to Leslie's daughter. His name was in the original case file from day one. But without a DNA match, detectives couldn't prove it. For over 2 decades, the case went cold. Until a water bottle at Dulles Airport changed everything. This is the story of Leslie Preer, and how forensic genetic genealogy finally brought her killer to justice. 23 years after her death. Leslie Preer was 56 years old. She lived in the Chevy Chase Village neighborhood of Montgomery County, one of the most affluent areas in Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C. She was a mother, a professional, someone whose absence at work that Wednesday morning was immediately noticed. The people who knew her knew. Leslie Preer didn't just not show up. When police arrived at her home for the welfare check, they found Leslie Preer inside. She was dead. The medical examiner determined she'd been killed by blunt force trauma and strangulation. At the scene, investigators recovered critical evidence. Blood found under Leslie Preer's fingernails contained DNA, proof that she'd fought back against her attacker. That DNA would become the key to solving this case. But in 2001, genetic databases weren't what they are today. The sample went into evidence and waited. Investigators had suspects early on. In any homicide, detectives look first at the people closest to the victim. Family members, spouses, anyone with access to the home. Leslie's husband, Sandy Preer, was initially investigated. That's standard procedure. But when his DNA was tested against the sample from the crime scene, it didn't match. Sandy Preer was cleared, but the investigation continued. Detectives interviewed neighbors, examined phone records, and built a timeline of Leslie's final days. And one name kept surfacing. Eugene Gligor. He'd dated Leslie's daughter Lauren back in high school. Their families knew each other. They lived in the same Chevy Chase neighborhood. Gligor had been inside that house many times. He knew Leslie, he knew the family, he knew the layout. And detectives suspected him, but suspicion isn't evidence. Without a direct DNA match, prosecutors couldn't bring charges. The case went cold. Months turned to years. Years turned to decades. And Leslie Preer's murder remained unsolved. 21 years passed. Lauren Preer grew up without her mother. The detectives who worked the original case retired or moved on. But DNA evidence doesn't age, it waits. In September 2022, Montgomery County detectives made a decision. They submitted the blood evidence from Leslie Preer's fingernails to Othram, a forensic genetic genealogy company. Forensic genetic genealogy works differently than traditional DNA matching. It doesn't require a direct hit in a criminal database. Instead, it builds family trees, tracing DNA through generations of relatives. Here's how it works. Partial DNA from a crime scene is uploaded to genealogical databases. The system finds distant relatives, second cousins, third cousins, people who share genetic markers. From those matches, genealogists work backward, building family trees, identifying branches, narrowing down candidates until they reach potential suspects. It's detective work through genetics. In June 2024, the Othram results came back. Detectives were reviewing the genealogical matches when something caught their attention. A surname. Gligor. The detectives recognized it immediately. That name had been in the original case file from 2001, Eugene Gligor, Lauren Prier's ex-boyfriend. But genetic genealogy only identifies likely suspects. It's not courtroom evidence on its own. Detectives needed Gligor's actual DNA directly obtained to confirm the match. The question became, how do you get someone's DNA without tipping them off? Without a warrant for their bodily fluids? The answer, you wait for them to throw something away. In June 2024, detectives followed Eugene Gligor to Dulles International Airport. They watched. They waited. And when he finished a water bottle and tossed it in the trash, they retrieved it. The DNA on that water bottle was tested against the blood from under Leslie Prier's fingernails. 23 years apart. And they matched. This was historic for Montgomery County. It was the first time the department had ever used familial DNA to solve a cold case murder. And it worked. In June 2024, Eugene Gligor was arrested in Washington, D.C. After more than 2 decades of freedom, the walls finally closed in. For Lauren Prier, this moment was 23 years in the making. The man she'd dated as a teenager, someone she'd trusted, someone she'd brought into her family's home, had killed her mother. She would have to face him in court. The ex-boyfriend who'd sat at her family's dinner table, now sitting at the defendant's table. In May 2025, Eugene Gligor pleaded guilty, not to first-degree murder, but to second-degree murder. A plea deal. Some felt it was too lenient given the circumstances. Second-degree murder. That charge suggests the killing wasn't premeditated in the eyes of the law. Critics questioned whether that was accurate. Eugene Gligor had known Leslie Prier. He'd been in her home before. On August 28, 2025, the sentencing came, Montgomery County Circuit Court. Eugene Gligor received 22 years in prison for the murder of Leslie Prier, 22 years, for a crime committed 24 years earlier. Lauren Prier was there for the sentencing, facing the man who'd taken her mother from her. The case raises questions that don't have easy answers. About justice, about time, about what it means when someone you once trusted destroys your family. The motive for Leslie Prier's murder has never been publicly disclosed. Why Eugene Gligor killed his ex-girlfriend's mother remains known only to him, and perhaps to investigators who've never released that detail. But the Prier case represents something larger. It's proof of concept. Proof that cold cases that seemed impossible to solve, can be cracked with new technology and patient detective work. For families with cold cases, there may be options you don't know about. Consider reaching out to advocacy groups that specialize in forensic genetic genealogy. Organizations like the DNA Doe Project work to bring resolution to families. If your family has an unsolved case, you might want to ask your local police department about submitting evidence to companies like Othram. Forensic genealogy has solved hundreds of cold cases in recent years. It may also help to understand how DNA evidence is preserved. Many police departments retain biological evidence indefinitely. Evidence from decades-old cases can often still be tested with modern technology. This case shows that killers can hide among people the victim knew. Research consistently suggests most murder victims know their attackers. Statistically, strangers are the exception, not the rule. For Lauren Prier, the legal process brought a measure of closure. But it can never bring her mother back. 23 years of holidays, milestones, and ordinary days that Leslie Prier missed. The case also raises ethical questions about forensic genealogy. When you submit your DNA to an ancestry service, your relatives become searchable, even if they never consented to that. Privacy advocates argue that people who spit into tubes for fun facts about their heritage didn't agree to help police catch their distant relatives. But for families of murder victims, that debate looks different. Eugene Gligor will be eligible for parole after serving his sentence. He was arrested at age 42. He'll likely be in his 60s when he's released, if he serves the full term. Leslie Preer was 56 when she died. She'll never be 60, never be 70. Her grandchildren, if she has any, will only know her through photographs and stories. If cases like this interest you, consider subscribing. We cover stories like this regularly. Understanding how cold cases get solved can help bring awareness to investigations that still need resources. The Preer case took 23 years to solve, but it was solved. That's the message for families still waiting. Science advances, techniques improve, and evidence doesn't forget. Leslie Preer was murdered on May 2, 2001. For 23 years, her killer walked free. In 2025, Eugene Gligor was sentenced to 22 years in prison. A discarded water bottle, a surname in a database, 23 years of waiting. And finally, for Leslie Preer's family, something closer to justice. This has been Case Files Explained. The name in the file was there all along. It just took science 23 years to prove what detectives had suspected from the start.